Good evening. Greetings, everyone. Hope you are doing well. Come on in, have a seat so we can get down to this business that we need to talk about tonight. My name is Thandisizwe Chimurenga, and this is Rootwork on the Black Liberation Media platform. Over the weekend, Donald Trump went through with some of his campaign threats to place tariffs on China, Mexico, and Canada. 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada, 10% on China. Those tariffs were set to go into effect at midnight tonight, i.e., Tuesday morning. Since that time, we know that Trump has placed a 30-day hold on that action against Canada and Mexico. I wasn't able to check to see what's happening with China, but a 30-day hold, i.e., tariffs will go into effect March 1st. I'm sure that there are some conditions attached to that. I don't have that information with me at the moment, but our next guest might, because our guest is the one who alerted me to the fact that this might be an attempt to create economic sabotage, economic destruction here in the U.S. You know, those are big words for me. I don't necessarily do well with big words. So I asked the brother who gave me that information, Kali Akuno, to hop on here with me tonight because I didn't feel like we needed to wait until the morning show. I'm sure they'll be going over it on the morning show. I'm sure my other comrades here on this platform will be dealing with the issue. But I was like, we got to do this now because what's going on? People need to understand what's going on from a very, very basic level, but they also need to know what can be done about it. So again, my guest is Kali Akuno, co-founder, executive director of Cooperation Jackson in Jackson, Mississippi, which is building sustainable solidarity economies with an S down in the Jackson, Mississippi area. Thank you so much, Kali, for being on Rootwork tonight.
Always a pleasure to be here. Looking forward to getting into it.
You and I had been discussing alternatives to what we're enduring, the building of solidarity economies, mutual aid, cooperative economics. We had been in discussion with this prior to Trump's actions on the weekend. As a matter of fact, we talked about an educational series coming up that Cooperation Jackson is going to be sponsoring. It'll be broadcast live on your YouTube channel about these very same issues. We had been in discussion about that. And then Trump did his thing. What does this mean? What was the word that you used to describe it?
Which we
Economic,
got a whole bunch of them.
Are we on the verge of economic collapse? What do you mean by that, Kali? And I'm serious.
Well, try to put it in, I guess, some common vernacular. Some of it will probably have to switch to your some quote unquote standard economic language. But
okay.
Let's start with Trump's campaign promises.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then I think there's two things that people really need to probably pay more attention to than his campaign promises, in truth. And that was his inauguration speech.
Mm-hmm.
And then basically a few days later, about 5 days later, probably the most important speech I think he's ever given,
Mm-hmm.
at least in my opinion, which I think laid out the fullest articulation of his vision and strategy, was the televised kind of broadcast, because he didn't go over to Europe for Davos, but the speech he gave at Davos. And Davos, for those of you who don't know, is a conference where the bourgeois elite, the ruling class, gather to discuss world policy and make, open and backdoor deals. It's been going on for, I think, about 30 years now. It's in Switzerland. And some of you may know it because the World Social Forum, which grew out of the World Trade Organization. It had precedents before that, but the announcement of it came in 1999
Right.
on the heels of what many call the battle in Seattle, the World Trade Organization, and the protests that corresponded, and social movements from Brazil and Europe, mainly attacking, and La Via Campesina and the MST, the Landless People's Movement, really called for a global response. And they chose the January date when most of those social forums were. And that started in Sao Paulo, Brazil, where the Workers' Party, the PT, was in power at the time at the local level, not at the federal level now, at least. Lula, who represents the Worker Party, is the president. But they were just in that regional head and doing some transformative work at that time. And they called for this World Social Forum to be a counterpower to Davos.
Mm-hmm.
Now, getting back to this, why I'm citing all this and even going into some of that history. Donald Trump laid out a clear vision for his golden age. The clearest vision of his golden age.
Mm-hmm.
And the tariffs that he unleashed are just one component, right, of the tools in the toolkit of utilizing state power that the United States government can and does wield to try to bring the world to heel and to get it to succumb to its dictates.
Mm-hmm.
These are commonly used. The Biden administration used many of them, so I want folks to be clear about that. Almost every president, every commander in chief, so you understand who they really are and what their role is, have used these on one nation or another. But this particular set of tariffs were designed to hurt first allies, so-called allies of the United States,
Mm-hmm.
a warning shot to the world about the level of compliance that the Donald Trump regime is demanding that everybody do to fall back in line and get back under the what many used to call the Washington consensus, but basically just succumbing to U.S. Imperial control, what many people call hegemony, and to basically just get back in line. But there's a broader aim to this that what this is aiming for, and we need to be clear about that. And that really is, this is a prelude to really going to war with China. And he is advancing that agenda. But I want folks to understand this is not Trump's singular agenda, right? The U.S. ruling class, pretty much since Obama, has determined that this war is coming, that it's inevitable, and that each regime, the Obama regime 1 and 2, the Trump regime 1, and the Biden regime 1, and now the Trump regime number 2, they are all been gearing up with slightly different variations in tone, in rhetoric, and levels of aggression. But they've all been gearing up for this kind of inevitable war, right? Like, who is going to control the world? The United States does not aim, very clearly, does not aim to go the way of Great Britain, wherein at least between the two dominant powers, there was kind of a peaceful, if you want to call it that. I don't think the Russians would agree or the Germans would agree, but there was somewhat a peaceful transition from the United Kingdom, right, running the world, being in the kind of the pole position, if you would, and they surrendered that wholeheartedly in the course of World War II, and the United States became the dominant nation in World War II and set what was called the rule-based order with the institutions of the United Nations on the one hand to run the politics, and the institutions of Bretton Woods, on the other hand, to moderate economic development, trade, balance of funds, payments, all those different things. And for folks who don't understand what the Bretton Woods institutions are, just going over that, that's the World Trade Organization, which is the newest member. It used to be the General Agreements on Tariffs and Trade before that, and that was negotiated over a 50-year period. And I'm stressing that so you understand the kind of the long-term planning that at least the U.S. ruling class once had, that they structured this out. But the core institutions that most everybody knows are the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, and the World Bank. Those are the Bretton Woods institutions. There's other minor ones, but those are the three major ones. And like I said, there's the politics and the economics. And this is this so-called world rule-based international order that the United States has kind of presided over and kept the world in check. Well, both of these have been in steady decline. And particularly the United States' economic capacity to kind of dominate the world has been on a steady decline since the 1970s. What the United States does have a dominant position over is over financial flows, right? Over financial transactions, over international currency and currency exchange. And the dollar being the reserve currency of the world means that basically, so folks understand it, put in layman's terms, the rest of the world pays a tax to the United States that people in the United States could then benefit from, basically kind of really as a piggy bank to subsidize the opulence that exists within the United States relative to the rest of the world. Now, I stress that because, by straight material standards, even poor people have more access to material goods within the United States. So it's a kind of a relative, everything is relative, put that in context. But there's a relative probably rather than say a more materialist, material less access that you might have in parts of Africa, Asia, or Latin America, right? Where here, we have access to phones, cars, things of that nature. And we got to understand how I'm citing this so folks understand what being in the kind of the heart of the world empire, what kind of material benefit it offers. Not to everyone equally. Don't get me wrong by that, by any stretch of the imagination. But by just virtue of being in this, decadent place in this Babylon, we have more access on account of the U.S. basically robbing and stealing from the world with almost every transaction, not just military, but with every transaction to extract resources from the rest of the world, bring them here, concentrate and hoard them. What Trump is saying.
So, because I'm looking at the media, and the media is emphasizing this quote unquote temporary pain that Americans might have to bear, the various goods, services, but mainly goods and sectors that are going to be quote unquote hurt if tariffs go through, and how they're going to pass it on to quote unquote the consumer. That was all the doom and gloom earlier today. And then we had the quote unquote stay of execution, if you will, against
30-day, be clear. Everybody should be
right. 30-day against Mexico and Canada. And we'll see what it is that I guess we're going to assess it at the end of 30 days. But the media is talking about these, or should I say, the media has given the appearance of being concerned with these quote unquote bread and butter, meat and potato issues.
Well, that's what
I'm talking about global domination, world domination.
But that's what I was trying to go. So, because see, be mindful with bourgeois media, y'all. That's one place I was about to go.
Okay.
Because you got to see. I want us to see the commonality between the Democrats and the Republicans, despite some of the rhetoric, because they actually unite on a number of critical things. And where one of the points that they unite on is, that China got to stay in this place, and that the United States is going to remain the top dog. They got rock solid unity on that. And they got rock solid unity on the other aspects of imperialism. That's why they agree on Palestine, right? That the Palestinians have to be punished to demonstrate to the rest of the world what the awesome might of the United States government can and will do to anybody who wants to challenge it.
Mm-hmm.
That's an example. And that's why, for instance, the so-called opposition, I just saw something a few minutes before coming on, Hakeem Jeffries, don't let the name fool you. You know, but he's skin folk, but he ain't kin folk.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let the name fool you. He's running around promoting war with Iran, while the other members of his party are sitting there screaming about all of the legalities of what Donald Trump is doing, but not posing any opposition.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and in the mainstream media, particularly like the MSNBC and the CNN, you know, they kind of preaching a certain type of doom and gloom and concern.
Right.
But Trump, being as smart as he is, and I said that, he is so smart. This man is smart. What he knew he constructed in this first couple of days was, let me create an atmosphere of chaos and panic, right? Say that there's no way, he just said there's no way y'all gonna get rid of this tariffs, but then he set up a conference call with both of them today.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the conference call, both of them, you know, took a little bit of a bow and said, okay, you know, what can we do to avoid this? He ensured a win and gave a bunch of red meats to his base.
Mm-hmm.
So he promoted fear,
Mm-hmm.
got a set of compromise of folks bending his way, and now he can title it as a victory. But the thing that he's going to wind up doing on the heels of that, because Trump is a bully, he understands the bully, you know, yard. So if you give him one thing, he's going to come back for more. He ain't stopping, right? And remember, this is the richest cabinet that has ever existed anywhere on the planet Earth. I mean, the Roman Senate didn't have ballers like this, like he got his cabinet.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if you listen to Elon Musk has been saying long before he actually came into power with this Doge, he's been saying for a good number of years, we need an extinction event. That's what his words. Right? Humanity needs an extinction event. It needs to be revived, like we in some Dune novel or something like that, right? Like humanity got to be recreated from the ashes of its complacency and all this other kind of stuff. He ain't gonna hurt from the pain that will be inflicted from the tariffs. And in fact, him and his billionaire buddies, this is a technical term, it's been reported, right, by several like Wall Street Journal economists, been reporting different things, that there's various numbers of them have been playing the U.S. Futures market for short, meaning that they are betting that the United States economy will tank, which means at the end of the day, they're going to make money off the collapse, right? If it's structured in a particular way. And not only will they make money, they will be able to seize more assets and move us further along the needle once they secure even more. Recognize they already control 3/4 of all the wealth in the United States, right? About 20 people. They will control more land. Bill Gates is the largest landowner in the United States. I hope y'all know that.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard
right
that.
behind them, right? And that's just in the United States, not what they own internationally. What they own in the United States, which is a bunch of prime farmland. They've been accumulating this for years. Ask yourself why and for what, right? Do they farm? You know, I ain't never seen one of them out there, you know, raising no chickens or doing so that they can employ people to do that. So what's all this for, right? They all planning on going to the moon or going to Mars, and building spaceships in reserve. Bill Gates out there, you know, promoting who knows what in what the hell's kind of vaccine, promoting, you know, meat processed chicken extract is meat all over the world. And the folks that he is kind of gearing up and taking this advice, who was taking the short betting against, again, they're not going to hurt. But what they are planning on and what Trump is promoting is saying, yeah, the United States will hurt a bit, and it'll hurt, you know, working class people for a bit, or the middle class, as they like to talk, for a bit. But what he's aiming on is that all of the corporations that see the United States as its primary market, that they will pull their factories out of Mexico, out of Canada, starting with those two, put them back in the United States to ensure a productive base is reborn here, and that jobs go to high-paying jobs or some level of job, wind up going back to quote unquote Americans, and that will be usher in the golden age. But it's a narrative of the world, which is why I started Thandi. I'm going to come back to it. Why I was starting with the history, because his narrative of the world is one in which, the United States was the top producer in the world, and somehow it just kind of slipped, right? As well as the military power. He thinks this is the 1950s, and he's in for a rude awakening in having to recognize at the end of the day, the rest of the world is not dependent upon U.S. production, and it's growing less dependent upon the regulation or the domination of U.S. financial flows. Like, despite all of my criticism of BRICS, that's the alliance, for folks who don't know, the alliance of Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. One of its main currencies as an economic alliance. It's not a political alliance, it's an economic alliance. And one of the things that they all agree upon is that they want to end the domination of the dollar and are moving in that way. And so if you look at all these different moves, right? When why I'm talking about this is a whole piece around China. China is the heart of BRICS. That's the other behemoth, the other real rival.
Okay, but let me jump in and cut you off, because I'm slow. That's why I asked you to come on the show. These people are threatening economic collapse of the United States of America so that they can bring the rest of the world to heel to the United States of America, but not really the United States of America, a particular class that is running the United States of America. So the tariffs, raising prices, this tax on these countries, all the goods coming in from these other countries, whether there's a March 1st deadline or not, threatens to raise the prices of those things that folks in America need, use, want, etc. And this is to because they mad at China and want China to step off. You're not going to run the world.
It's not just mad at China.
But they're willing to destroy, quote unquote, parts of the U.S., if not half of the U.S., through this manipulation of the economy so that they can be on top.
Absolutely. Understand that very clearly. Absolutely.
That's what this is about. But now they've threatened Canada and Mexico, and they've backed down, quote unquote, for a minute. We'll see what happens in March. Where are we right now today? Like I said, I don't even know if he called China on the phone, if China hung up on him. I don't know what happened. Where are we now with this?
We need to look at what he did part of this before during his first term. And study very clearly what China did, y'all. So he wound up losing part of that war the first time with China. And China's prepared. They knew this was coming. So don't think the Chinese are foolish.
Okay.
But are unprepared for this in any fundamental way. They are. So China hit back with tariffs of its own.
Right.
And then they pulled out of, being a major importer of raw goods from the United States, particularly agricultural products, soybeans, corn, rice, catfish, things of that nature. They pulled back. They moved their sourcing of all those items primarily to Brazil. So Brazil sources them now, not the United States. All right. And so they never came back after those tariffs. And to keep people satisfied to a degree, those farmers satisfied who lost that, who were primarily all in Trump country, mind you, Trump had to subsidize them for years, right, during his term to kind of keep them at bay. And so when you look at some of the aspects of the kind of the judo that he did during the Biden administration, he was able to flip the script around this inflation, is a result of Biden's bad policies. No, it was the direct result of the policies and this type of economic warfare that Trump himself tried to orchestrate the first time around.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other piece was that they had to ramp up spending to deal with the COVID pandemic during his administration. And it took a while, right, for the quote unquote market to adjust to the supply crunch, to the collapse of the oil market that happened during the beginning of the pandemic. Y'all remember in like February, March, basically February through April of 2020, they were giving away oil, literally. Right, the price of it had dropped so bad that they were just giving it away, and you had all those ships during the pandemic that were just sitting out idle at sea for months, right? So this wind up having kind of a ripple effect. So all of that crisis around inflation preceded the Biden administration. And don't get me wrong, I ain't no fan of the Democrats, the neoliberal policies. No, I ain't trying to defend them all. I'm just trying to cite a certain level of facts so folks are clear. All right. So China is going to adjust and has been diversifying, getting ready to assume its position relative to being the top dog. They not really blinking on a certain level, and they have over the United States. So there's this notion that it's a deep rival, and maybe politically to a certain extent it is. I don't think so. Beyond we can talk about that another day, but China's rise is a direct result of the neoliberal orientation of the economic order the United States pursued since Richard Nixon. That's what people got to understand. It's directly tied. Now the Chinese did something brilliant because they had something that almost no other nation in history had, right? As a result of how they decided to kind of build their communism with Chinese characteristics, as they call it, right? So two things to understand about China for folks who are listening. When Mao and Zhou Enlai and those folks, signed that agreement with them, they did so on the basis of two things. Number one, China had no debt. Think about that. Had no debt at the time to anybody.
And when you say when they signed what? What are you talking about?
They signed a pact, basically a peace agreement. In Nixon went to China and opened up the Chinese market for basically U.S. investment, and that is when the United States started to ship all of its industrial productive capacity, right, over to China to exploit the Chinese workforce. And that's the second point I was getting at. The Chinese had no debt, and then they had a highly educated but cheap workforce. Rock bottom cheap workforce. And that meant that they could replace, our parents. So people understand your and my parents, who were the industrial core of the United States in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, right? And the United States Capitol took home a key lesson from the urban rebellions of our people in the 1960s, that you cannot have a rebellious, internal colony that has the capacity to destroy your industries, should they be so conscious and minded enough to meet their own demands, which they had some experience in Detroit in 67, right? In Newark, right? In Gary, in Cleveland, right? In Oakland, right? Where there were major riots, rebellions, upheavals that were pushed by our folks who were in organized formations at that time to challenge them, right? From the Revolutionary Action Movement to the League of Revolutionary Black Workers to the Congress of African People to the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, and there were many, many more. The Republic of New Africa, all of which had folks in all of these different places with bases, organized people who were ready, some like the League of Revolutionary Black Workers, ready to engage in militant action at the actual site of production at what was then America's main export, which was cars, and shut it down. If they so choose, or do something even more, detrimental, if they had so chose. So there was a deliberate strategy, right, that the United States had to employ, and there were other things like the debt the United States was incurring because of the war in Vietnam, which was going on at the exact same time.
Right.
So they had to, what they Nixon wound up doing a couple of different things. One, to kind of break that Bretton Woods international world order at that time. One, he took the dollar off the gold standard and let it float.
Yeah.
That's how we got to the petrodollar and the dollar formation that we have today, right? And how they wound up extracting people, through the financial currencies, and people paying through oil, which the world is dependent upon oil still, and clearly now will be, based upon how, Trump is and his folks are totally divesting from any kind of solar or green transition as a key part.
Okay.
And understand why.
I need to go back. I need to go back. I told you.
Okay.
I'm slow and you keep getting deep on me. I need you to stay in the shallow end of the pool.
This is the shallow end. I'm a worker.
Nixon in the 70s, opening up with China, their cheaper workforce, displacing our parents,
educated,
our grandparents,
got that on.
Right, educated but cheap, displacing our peoples as the workforce. Making America great again. Doesn't that mean putting Americans back to work?
Under what term?
Doesn't that mean keeping industries here as opposed to in Mexico or China, even though it's cheaper? Doesn't that mean keeping stuff here?
No.
Employing us.
I want you to go back to what you said. Go back to what you said relative to the pain. What is the pain intended to do? Just make it simple. What is the pain intended to do?
The temporary pain that
no. Who says it's going to be temporary?
Well, the pain that I thought your boy said that, Orange Man.
Okay, but there's what
pain that Americans are going to feel in order to be made great again.
But and so what does that mean? Let's break it down. Let's make it simple.
Doesn't it mean higher prices at the grocery store? That's not what it means.
No. So if every car is made in the United States with the current United States labor relations, wages, environmental standards, ain't nobody could afford that car except for us Europeans, Japanese, and Australians.
Okay.
So who you selling cars to? If you accepting that standard.
But the part of the reason why
no. Don't move forward. No, I'm going with you now. Let's not move. I want people to really understand who's going to pay for that. What other country is going to be able to pay for that in mass? If you paying an American worker, right now under current terms and conditions, right? If you go to the Nissan plant up in Canton, Mississippi, up the road. Starting at $25 an hour. That's the wage.
Right.
Okay, and you got to factor that into all the materials, all the energy, right, that goes into this. That means you're not going to sell nothing less from anything made in the United States with all of this golden age labor and production. These cars going to be no less than $50,000, $60,000. That's going to be your cheap end, mind you. So tell me, who in Africa, who in Asia, who in Latin America, in the growing markets, in the growing population centers of the globe, which are in Africa and Asia. Africa has the fastest rate of growth, population growth out of anywhere, Africa and Asia. Who is going to be able to afford those vehicles? Not much of nobody in those places are going to be able to afford them at the prices that they would sell for if labor conditions remain the same in the United States. So what they have to do is inflict pain to lower wages here.
But now, nobody's going to be able to afford those cars because of wages or because of the profit that the
Wages.
car
No,
manufacturer?
wages. See, most people in the world don't make enough to consume an American car
Mm-hmm.
as it currently is, or something
Mm-hmm.
labeled by which is why the Chinese have been ramping up their car production all over the world because they make them faster and cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
So things that the rest of the world could use to be on the cheap. Me and you both old enough to remember how cheap the Volkswagen Bug used to be, and
Mm-hmm.
that was why they were so common when we was kids, because they was cheap, right?
Everywhere.
And they were everywhere, and
Mm-hmm.
the parts were interchangeable. So you can get a part from another Volkswagen, whether it was a Bug or not, and put it in that Volkswagen and keep rolling, right?
My
They had a
brother's first
particular
car was a Bug.
orientation, right? They had a particular orientation towards a mass production Fordist orientation that kept things cheap and interchangeable.
Mm-hmm.
So that created a particular market for them that
Mm-hmm.
was about, we want to hit this mass market and entry level. The Japanese did the same thing when they first introduced Datsun and Toyota. Remember,
Mm-hmm.
they used to be cheap and interchangeable, right? Very cheap, which is how they wind up getting in part into the U.S. market, right? Particularly during the 1970s when U.S. wages became stagnant. And that wind up filling the role because U.S. auto factories, right? Remember the U.S. GM, General Motors, and Ford and them. Remember they used to make them big ass Lincolns and Cadillacs. That's what they was making in the 70s. That
Oh.
was expensive that was very expensive. That was gas guzzlers,
Mm-hmm.
right? And both of us also remember the 2 oil strikes. I remember, I was young, but I remember them lines waiting in line at the gas station growing up in LA for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours,
Yeah.
waiting to get gas,
Mm-hmm.
right? On the account of what OPEC was doing,
Mm-hmm.
the oil, petroleum exporting countries, that particular alliance, what it was doing, right, to try to gain more concessions and gain more power, right,
Right.
in support of some of the national liberation movements on the one hand, those that was coming up and had some revolutionary or radical politics at the very least, and then those that were just trying to make a profit, like Saudi Arabia, like, we'll play the game because we want more money.
Mm-hmm.
So we old enough to remember that, but you got to put all that in a particular context. And so this whole thing about, again, they're not idiots. People need to understand that these folks are not idiots. Elon Musk, he didn't create Tesla, but he knew what it was when he saw it, and he knew to buy it, because that's what he did. He bought Tesla. Tesla was already in existence. He captured somebody else's dream and just had more finance and then a better marketing scheme. That's all that really was, with almost everything that he's been involved in. But he ain't no dummy, right? And so part of the thing that they are trying to accomplish is not just rewriting the terms for the globe, they're rewriting relations of production here in the United States. And what that means is that they need a good chunk of the quote unquote American middle class, i.e. the American working class, right? Particularly as lower sectors, to take less wages and less or no benefits at all to make the United States and its products more competitive in the global market, to meet China, to take away China's advantage. And one of China's advantages still is a tremendous population, highly educated, and relative to the United States and Western Europe in particular, its labor force is still cheap. They don't cost that much to pay them, so they can make all these products, right? And that don't have excess wages. Their wages are rising, and that's part of what the Chinese, Communist Party is trying to do in its own particular way, is to rise their wages so that their people can have more aggregate, material benefits similar to what the West has had. So that's an aspiration of theirs and how they define a particular variant of socialism.
Right.
So that's where they're trying to go. But right now, they, and this is when you hear the arguments coming from all of these administrations, the Biden administration, the Obama administration. If you don't believe me, go back and listen to all of their complaints about China. They artificially manipulate their currency. Every single one of them has said that, right? They artificially keep their wages down of their workers, right? Saying that they are not operating by market principles and dynamics, not allowing the free market to determine, because they are intentionally keeping their products cheap so that they have a competitive advantage in U.S. and Western markets, and keeping the labor force down in terms of the wages, whatever, so that they remain cheap, and that those who have capital, i.e. the capitalists and the multinational corporations, would choose to go to China to build their factories to be able to sell goods. And understand, there's a still good number. This is why they're 10% as opposed to like what's going on. Because Elon Musk, if you all just cite the examples of stuff going on, he hit up Trump himself. Hey man, I got a bunch of factories over there. You can't be messing with my money, right? Hitting with these tariffs, because that means if somebody wants to import one of my cars or solar panels, X, Y, and Z, and you hit them with a 25% tariff, that means folks in the United States is going to wind up paying that tariff tax, which is basically what it is, and it's going to make it less competitive. And the Chinese will come behind me with their cheaper end products, cheaper off the top, and outcompete me in the U.S. market. I don't want that. I want to have that. So we're going to figure out another route by which to go with them. But they're trying to reset terms inside the United States and internationally. So if you want to just look at it from a maniacal standpoint, right?
Maniacal.
Yeah, I mean, the maniacal brilliance of Trump. Part of what he's laid out is pretty brilliant. I hate to say it, but stand back and look at the chessboard. It may seem random to be like, we're going to invade Panama and invade Greenland. That ain't random at all. At all. That's all about geo-positioning and getting prepared for both either a trade war or an actual physical war with the Chinese. That's what that is about.
I'm trying to, I decided to look it up real quick. We talked about earlier, if you just now joined us, I'm speaking with Kali Akuno, co-founder, co-director of Cooperation Jackson, which is building sustainable cooperative, working on a sustainable cooperative economy in Jackson, Mississippi, in unison with other cooperative organizations across the country. We're talking about economic collapse, or the possibility of economic collapse because of Donald Trump's moves placing tariffs on China, Canada, and Mexico over the weekend. As of this afternoon, there's been a pause on the tariffs against Mexico and Canada, a 30-day pause. I hadn't seen any more about if there was going to be a pause. What were the discussions that Trump had with the premier of China? So looking this up right now, I came across this article on the BBC from 3 hours ago. I was trying to make it bigger for you all to see. Can't really get it that big. Trump sows uncertainty, and I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. Is
Xi Jinping? Xi Jinping. Yeah.
Xi Jinping sees an opportunity. From 3 hours ago, this is the BBC. If China is angry at the United States for imposing an extra 10% tariff on all Chinese goods, it is doing a good job of hiding it. Both Canada and Mexico vowed to retaliate. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said his country would not back down as he announced a 25% levy on more than $100 billion of American goods. U.S. President Donald Trump then agreed to temporarily pause tariffs on goods imported from both countries after reaching separate agreements with them. The tariffs on China, however, are slated to go into effect on Tuesday. So far, Beijing has held its fire. So China being the real target here. Here we go. Xi's win-win as America retreats. President Jinping may also have another reason. He may see an opportunity here. Trump is sowing division in his own backyard, threatening to hit even the European Union with tariffs, all in his first month in office. His actions may have other U.S. allies wondering what is in store for them. In contrast, China will want to appear a calm, stable, and perhaps more attractive global trade partner.
There it is,
Trump's
right
America
there.
First policy will bring challenges and threats to almost all countries in the world. From the perspective of U.S.-China strategic competition, a deterioration of U.S. leadership and credibility will benefit China. It is unlikely to turn well for China on the bilateral level, but Beijing will surely try to make lemonade. What were you saying, Kali?
No, whoever wrote that summed it up. China, if I was China, I'd do exactly what I think she is doing. I'd be sitting there playing cool and look at what they did in Panama, right? So while Rubio was in Panama threatening the Panamanians, right? China sent their ambassador over there too, and was just like, hey, let's do more trade, let's do more, let's do more exchange. What can we help you with? How, what you need, right? So they saw an opportunity and opened and basically pounced on it. Like, if you want to go act the fool, threaten everybody, and if that's the only tool in your toolkit, then you go ahead. And I'm gonna roll out the red carpet to everybody. Let's trade, let's be friends. You'll get a better deal over here than mess with them folks, up the street.
I'm not finding any news about if Trump had a conversation with China the way he had a conversation with Mexico and Canada. I'm not seeing anything about it.
No, like I said, the Chinese got no reason to panic. And remember, they've been through this.
Well, I understand they have no reason to panic, but if Trump is trying to bully somebody, you're not gonna call them up and say, "So what y'all gonna do?"
No, because China don't have no need to back down. Right?
And
they've already, this is the point I want people, they've already demonstrated in practice. You threatened us before and you tried to bully us the last time and it didn't work. And not only that, we found more people to play with as a result of your ignorance.
As a result of you taking your marbles away.
Right. We found some new people to play with. And they're happy. Right? They nice to be doing a trade with us and making soybeans and sending us catfish and beef and pork. They happy. They don't have no problem with it. They said, bring it on. How many more you want? Want them now? The part of it is unfortunate in the global scheme is terrible because you got more deforestation of the Amazon and the Patagonian region, which is not good for climate change. So there's some consequences, but within the normal play of economics, they like, look, every door you close, there's more people willing to open up a new one.
Okay.
And if you're gonna keep threatening your friends gonna have to start looking at, all right, well, I don't know if I can trust you. I don't know if this is stable. I'm not sure what you want, what you can do. And Justin Trudeau laid out a good speech, good point. If you listen to his speech and some of the policies, they saying like, okay, look, well, we're gonna have to find some new trading partners. Right? Like, so we don't want to lose the United States, but if with you at the helm, we it's now very clear to us we're gonna have to find some new people to play with. So, this may backfire on the empire. I'm not gonna lie to you. I hope it do. I hope.
But if it doesn't,
a whole bunch of pain.
If it doesn't backfire on the empire, and the pain that they're talking about is not, or should I say, it's more than just quote unquote consumer prices going up, the prices of goods being passed on to consumers. The pain is the restructuring of the U.S. labor force, the restructuring and the depressing of wages even further of the U.S. labor force.
Wages, working conditions. I want to lay it out. Wages, working conditions, right? And benefits being restructured. So, you go to work, cut off your finger. Good luck getting any support, right? And then with all the benefits being stricken, good luck going to the hospital and making it out of there without losing your whole arm.
Without losing something else.
Pay for it, right? Or a kidney. So that's what they are hoping for. But the end point, I want to just jump ahead a little bit, Tanya.
Well, I was going to say, so what do we do? What is it that we do?
Because I want folks to be clear that this is a gamble. Trump and at least a section of the ruling class are taking a major gamble, right? And that's part of the reason why he got elected, and part of the reason why all these tech giants are allied with him. Because the other component of this is there's a whole race that folks need to understand. There's a race to who's going to be the first one to actually create AI, artificial intelligence, right? A new singular consciousness. Who's going to control that? And that race is between the United States and China, right? There ain't nobody really on the field playing in that arena. And China just dealt a major body blow. It wasn't a kill shot, wasn't a knockout shot, but they put one hell of a body blow on them last week, or a week and a half ago now. It's all moving so fast, I'm losing track of time. I think it was a week and a half ago now, when the DeepSeek dropped, and they proved to the world that they don't need all those fancy chips in Taiwan anymore. Right? They don't need to spend billions of dollars, to develop these programs, and they can put it out in an open source platform for everybody to replicate and use, so that there is no further potential for a monopoly on this type of technology, which is what the companies, all the tech giants want, right? The techno-feudal lords is what they want. That was a major war shot. Understand it as that. Understand it. Like, warfare takes on many, dimensions, and that was a major one. And they timed it out like, okay, we know you about to drop this major investment, to the tune of a couple of trillions to support, all those billionaires who stood up there with you and are now part of your cabinet. They waited till right after that to be like, yo, we got something for you, right? And then tank their market, the largest loss of any corporation in history, single one-day loss, devaluation. And now, because of the open source nature of it, people from India, from Korea, South Africa, Ghana, they could all download that and play with it. And so what they were trying to do, and what they got a little heads up on, was building the infrastructure. And so something I was pointing out to Saki last night was the United States has a leg up in that the old cable that they used to run, the old telegrams on, and then the internet cable. The United States has a monopoly on it. That's their infrastructure that pretty much the rest of the world uses, right? And that's how they get. If you watch the Snowden movie or the Snowden documentary, and he talks about how the United States has these backdoor entries into even their allies' intelligence networks to know what Japan and the Europeans. That's because the infrastructure and all the protocols behind it was set up by the United States, their technology. Well, the new technology is trying to move beyond those protocols, beyond that infrastructure, and rely on a new infrastructure. China is trying to get ahead of that and lay the foundation through this kind of open AI piece, this open source piece that they just did, for it to be the primary supplier of this new infrastructure. That is just advancing the march to war. So I want folks to understand that's just a major piece, right? And BRICS, right? In the currency. So the other shoe that's going to drop probably in a couple of months from now is Trump trying to punish everybody who's looking to get off the U.S. dollar and be dependent upon the U.S. dollar. So get ready for that one. That one is coming. All right. And then the critical piece, while we're seeing advance towards this jump ahead, is that should the reorganization not work, that will further accelerate the last choice that the United States has in its arsenal, which is actual warfare. All right. So if should the reorganization not work, both domestically and internationally, the last option will be try to force a rearrangement through military means, which brings me back to the genocide that we have all witnessed in Palestine and what that was about. And what it ain't just because they want the Palestinians compliant. That is true. They don't want them there. They don't want them to exist. That's Democrats and Republicans. Be clear about that. Right? Be very clear about that. And I hopefully all the evidence is coming out now. More will come out. I think we know the leaked out. Biden, that was Biden's war from start to finish, right? Did it Benjamin Netanyahu? Did it benefit the Israeli right? Absolutely. But that was his call, right? That was his piece. And he's, still pursuing it regularly. In fact, listen what again, I would cite what Jeffries was saying, or has been saying these last couple of weeks, supposed to be opposition, that he wants to go after Iran and take out Iran's leadership for regime change. This is what he's talking about when he should be supposed to be protecting you from fascists. That's what he's running around talking about right now. And the other one is talking about, that we got Hamas on the run. We need to punish them, if not extinguish them. That's what they're talking about. So you understand what the unity and what this is about and what the recourse is. Anybody who dare challenges at the end of the day, we're going to turn your country into a parking lot. Most of the world's countries, they can do that to, but they can't do it to all of them. China is one that they couldn't do that to, right? And if China could build in more allies, right, this is going to make it real tough. So this is a serious gamble that they are taking, but it speaks to the level. I want folks to understand, all of your argument speaks to a level of desperation of the U.S. ruling class.
Yeah.
How threatened that they actually feel to be able to wreck their own system, though. The things that they put in place, they are wrecking and destroying. And listen to the president of Mexico. She just brought out, like, what you are trying to change a set of agreements that you set up with the last president just 6 years ago. Right? You trying to break the terms of NAFTA and the renegotiation that you set up. So she's calling it out like, wait a minute now, this ain't got nothing to do with fentanyl. This ain't got nothing to do with all this other rhetoric. This is a power grab, plain and simple. And you willing to inflict pain on us and your own people in order to amass power. That's fundamentally what this is about. They don't give a shit about people in the United States suffering, going hungry. They don't care. Folks need to be very clear about that and act accordingly.
So you sent me this link, this map. I'm just now seeing it. I don't remember at what point you sent it, but I at least wanted to acknowledge it. Firing back at Trump in the trade war with tariffs aimed at his base. On the left is the map where China's retaliatory tariffs threaten American jobs the most. On the right, this is from the New York Times. On the right, it says it looks similar to one showing where voters backed President Trump. So not to get bogged down into that. Again, I'm just...
No, I'm glad you picked that. I sent this to you when you were bringing up the piece around China.
Okay.
And I wanted to show to folks why China in part is not concerned, but we're going to go into this in the building fight in the first one.
Okay, well, let's talk about building fight.
I always use this map as a starting point, talking about the building fight formula and what I think we are trying to achieve. So I want everybody to look at this map. And this is in response, China's response to the first round of tariffs that Trump issued on them. I think it was in 2017, right? And they responded a week later with tariffs that hit these particular areas.
This is in October of 2018. Okay.
2018. So this was a targeted strike. I want folks to understand that, right? Like, and Xi Jinping and the Chinese Party, we ain't got no problem with the American people. But those of y'all who was dumb enough to vote for Trump and want to continue to support him, we're going to make y'all feel a little, pain, hopefully to get you to change your mind. That's what this was articulated, right? But what I want us to understand, this is about what we need to do to be effective. I want you to think about the Chinese hit back with this. Now granted, that's the state, right? With all the state power and state resources, and we don't have a movement strong enough, nor is the new African nation independent by any means. But we couldn't produce. Let's be real with ourselves. It would take us 10 years to come up with this type of information that they came up with in a week and hit back with tariffs. So there's a serious knowledge gap around our own environment that we don't have, y'all, that we have to get serious about understanding the political economy of the United States itself. Right? And like most folks, I'm sure, did not know that the United States' number one, actual physical trading partner is Canada. I wish I could show you. I wish I could pull up. Let me see if I can find it real quick, Tanya, because I want you to pull this up. So folks see and understand a few things. Give me a second, y'all. Bear with me.
All right. So while we are waiting on the brother man to get that information, I just want to remind y'all, this is the type of information that we strive to put out on Rootwork. Yes, this is a commercial that we try to put out on Black Liberation Media. So if you value this info, support Black Liberation Media by becoming a subscriber. If you're not already one, sign up on the Patreon because YouTube is hating and won't pay. You've got the information on the Venmo and the Cash App for this show for Rootwork, but also for Black Liberation Media is also available. When we talk about supporting and mutual aid, solidarity, support, we all we got. Again, this is the type of information that our media, and when by our media, you know who I'm talking about, needs to be putting out, but we need y'all help. Damn, I sound good. I'm gonna make a commercial.
Do it again.
We'll put that on a video and we can be playing. This is the type of work we need to be doing, and we need your support. Please support us. Cash App, Venmo, Patreon. All right. What was you going to say, colleague?
Now pull up. I sent you another link. Pull that one up, and I'm about to send you a picture. Hopefully you can get it and put that one up after this.
Let's see now. You want me to take this one down?
Take this one down. The other one up. Through with that one for now.
The top import partner of every U.S. state. Oh my. February 1st, 2025. Oh, just the other day. Cali hanging out with China. Okay.
And this is from the Visual Capitalist. If folks want to know, that's from the Visual Capitalist.
The Visual Capitalist?
Website called the Visual Capitalist. Put it on. I would suggest that everybody, put it in your save of links for education purposes. They have some good maps and information.
Well, look at that. Look at that. New parts of New Africa and Old Mexico. Their trading partner is Mexico. Oh,
and I'm going to pull up one more.
Okay.
But that speaks to the other side of this, since I can't send you this.
Let me put this. Let me go and put this in the chat for folks. The Visual Capitalist, I believe. Yep. So that's in the chat.
And give me a quick second to get you to find this other one.
So let's see. That's Mexico. Who's Indiana is Indiana's India, really? Okay. No, that's Ireland. Ireland. No trading with India going on? No. Okay. Indiana is Ireland. That's interesting. Idaho and Malaysia, their top import partner. Malaysia. Who got Germany? Oh, see Germany. What else you got for me, sir?
I think this one may have a little paywall behind it, y'all. Give me a second. No, here it is. I found another version of it. We found another way. Okay. I'm sending it everywhere.
Another way.
The internet is undefeated, as they say. All right, so that's the top. This map is the top import partners.
Mm-hmm.
The one I just sent you is the other side of that equation. The top export partners, right? And you put these two. I wish you could do them side by side. The one I was trying to pull up had a version of it that was side by side, but it's kind of hidden behind a paywall, so we can't get to that. But the other one just comes from a Reddit source. But you could find it if you can get behind the paywall on Business Insider and look it up.
Export trade.
And so we need to figure out, we should have, our movements and people in our movements being good materialists, which I hope everybody's trying to be, being good dialecticians, which I hope everybody's trying to be, should have some grasp of.
Wait a minute, hold on. Let me real quick. No, I'm not saying, hold on. Who is, okay, the blue is China and the red is Japan.
No, the red is the United Kingdom.
On this, I'm trying to see.
There's a light red, and then there's a kind of maroon red. And then if you look at Florida, Brazil, right? Utah, oddly enough.
But hold on, it's not shown. Okay, this is it small, and this is it large. It's saying Brazil and Florida, China, Louisiana. Okay, it looks all this. Okay, all right. They almost
mirror each other. There's the imports and exports almost mirror each other.
Yeah,
but the biggest export trading partner. This map is dominated by Canada. Look at that.
Yes, I see the blue. Yeah. These colors, these reds are bleeding together. But I see you. Yeah, right? Dominated by Canada.
Most of the traditional Southwest, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, California, Mexico, right? And then you got Kansas and Nebraska also dominated by Mexico. And then Utah is the United Kingdom. And I think over there in that corner, the red corner over there, which is what Connecticut, that's Germany, right? Export. So, this is knowledge we should have just in general, to understand, capital flows and how they impact our lives. Who's employing us, why, what interests do they have? How does it relate to our interests, etc. On both import and export? What goes in, what goes out? What's produced and why? And whose interest does it serve? These are some fundamental knowledge that we should all have. And it's diversified because this is, it's more diverse than this is just the largest, right? And the thing we got to understand is what they say trading partners is actually more complex because largely what you registered is where is the business, where is this home address, like where do they pay taxes to, right? So the folks who's doing this exports in this business, they paying taxes primarily in Canada, or at least a part of their business. But they factories could be in the United States. Their factory could be in South Africa. It doesn't, like the nature of the global production pieces, like some of the stuff that you've been listening to the videos, just about car production. To make a car, they send parts, they'll send engine made over in, Asia, send it over for a shell to, be placed in Canada, ship it to the United States for a part maybe of its transmission, send it back to Canada, for some the tires, and then send it finally back to the United States to be sold in the United States. Like, but the company that made that, let's say is General Motors, that done took place, this production assembly done took place in 4 different countries that I just cited, and they pay some tax all along the way, but the main taxes on that are probably sheltered somewhere in the Cayman Islands, right? So that they don't even have to pay taxes, even though the business, or most of it, even though the business is registered in Detroit, Michigan, right? So we got to understand the complexities of how this thing's work, how the wealth industry, the wealth protection industry works, and how folks, the rich, avoid paying taxes. Hardly, and these corporations hardly pay no taxes at all. Through tax shelters, we need to understand that. But in terms of,
let me cut you off because it's going on 8:15.
I was going to say, in terms of dealing with the pain,
talk about build and fight.
So number one, I got to do some plugging for us. We're gonna be doing this again through a series of things throughout the course of the year. This is a lecture series, if you want to call it that. Going to make it as interactive as possible, but as detailed as possible as well. But the first one is going to be February 11th. So next week.
Next week.
They're going to be going over that next Tuesday. So a week basically from today. Check us out.
Okay, that's going to be on the Rootwork.
Intro.
That's going to be on the Rootwork and Cooperation Jackson YouTube channels. Now, Cooperation Jackson is Jackson Rising. If you're not subscribed to Cooperation Jackson's YouTube channel, Jackson Rising, please, let me put it in the chat. Please go do that. Go ahead, Kylie.
Sign up for the page, so you can get it automatically. But here's a fundamental piece. I'm just going to break it down because we'll talk about it in some more detail, right? In terms of being our people in our communities being able to withstand the shocks that's coming, because this is just one. There's fundamentally 6 core things that we definitely encourage folks to do. Number one, begin to start planning out in your community to engage in massive mutual aid exchanges. This means first and foremost starting to get to know your neighbors and what your neighbors' needs are, and be able to articulate very clearly what your needs are. What resources, skills, and talents do you have that could be utilized to exchange to support others in need and to meet collective needs. So mutual aid is our starting point, right? And you in LA, y'all dealing with the fire. I've been hearing some great examples of communities coming together to do mutual aid in response, to what's going on, where the government support is completely inadequate, insufficient, too late, too little, and folks having to rely upon themselves to at least during this first initial wave of kind of dealing with the shock and the trauma, being able to provide shelter, food, transportation, medical supplies, basic care work, to each other. Those are fundamental things. We need to scale that up and get it organized immediately. And we need a response, I'm telling you now, that's going to be not only similar, but ultimately will likely have to dwarf by the end of the day what we saw the first year of the pandemic, when there was massive response around people organizing mutual aid, food distribution, medical distribution, mass distribution. All those different things are going to have to scale up. So put that on your radar and start getting organized for that right now. Okay, that's the first thing. The second pillar is collective food production, and that is more than a notion. But it's something that's going to need to happen now, because once these tariffs particularly kick in, and that being buttressed by the hunt for the farming workforce in the United States, which is largely migrant labor, as folks either get deported or continue to hide out in fear and not show up for work, not being able to work in the fields or work in the slaughtering houses or the packing houses, that means that there's either going to be nobody to do it, or they're going to have to bring in another source of labor, i.e., quote unquote, those with papers or citizenship, who will, actually demand wages and have legal recourse to get their wages. That means the price of food is going to go up. So get prepared for that. So I would encourage folks to start growing in your homes and growing in your community. Whatever space you have available, start with that. You have to take collective action, however, to do anything on a communal basis. So I know, like in Los Angeles, a lot of folks, there's yards in LA that people say in San Francisco or New York may not have. But, there's a good number of parks and other things available. Those need to be converted into full public space. That folks have to plan this out, because it can't just be every person for themselves, but we have to plan out the food production in line with what we are what knowledge we are ascertaining from the human need, from the communal needs that we get from engaging in the mutual aid work. And why these are in order, let me say that now, why these are in order, because they build upon each other. And the piece around the mutual aid, if we are doing it and doing it right, we begin to understand what the actual needs are, particularly the caloric needs, and we can start doing some planting and planning around meeting those needs, so people don't starve. So that's a piece as to why that one's next, and these two kind of form the base. The third one is where it begins to become more challenging, but of a necessity has to happen, right? We have to start controlling the places where we work. Put it that way. And that has to be a prelude to us owning and controlling, and dare I say, seizing the means of production to be able to meet our needs. All right. That's not going to happen in any other fundamental way. Because as the price for foodstuffs go up, the price for everything else is going to go up too. So, the basic kind of appliances that you may be able to depend upon, won't be accessible. You're going to have to rely upon one of the things that's further down, tool lending, library, skill, banking, and all those different stuff to be able to meet a kind of planned catastrophe that I would argue these folks have in mind. All right. So, and to the extent that you can, take over, unionize, and start direct these to meet human needs rather than meet profit, that's a critical step towards that direction to be able to meet our overall needs. And we're not just talking about, material goods. We're talking about things like hospitals. We're talking about things like school, daycare, all these different things that require collectivized work to be able to meet our needs, that we're going to need to have a critical level of control over. And put this in mind, one of the things we didn't even touch on today, Thandi, is, these folks are talking about straight up eliminating the Department of Education.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And think of the impacts of that will have both on the funding of education in this country. And despite what you may think about the public, I know it's a bunch of Black folks who, rightfully so, have criticism of the public school system, and there's plenty to criticize there. But the material condition of the vast majority of our people means this is the only place that our children can go that we can afford, because we don't all have the luxury of having a stay-at-home mother or a stay-at-home father or a stay-at-home grandfather or grandmother. That's not a luxury to most Black working class and other people. So the public schools, play a particular function and role that are right now a certain level that I think we have to defend. That's for another piece. But, us being able to control them outside of the dictates of what the state is either going to mandate coming down in terms of banning books and all those different types of things, we need to be in a position to fight back and make sure that these institutions meet the needs of our communities.
Absolutely.
So that this worker control is essential to that. Self-organization and worker control is not an abstract thing. You need it for food. You need it for, all types of production on every level. So that's a critical piece. And then we have been promoting, folks turn them into cooperatives and or convert them into cooperatives, right? The other one, now this is a little bit realistically a little bit more down the road, but it's something that we think people should be striving to do, and that's what we call community production, and that takes many different forms. One of the forms is that we encouraging folks to do is engage in learning the skills and techniques employed, through digital fabrication, which is more than just 3D printing, precision cutting, laser engraving, all those different types of things to be able to do. There's a good book, Be Able to Create Almost Anything by Neil Gershenfeld. Look that up. I would encourage folks to read that. This is putting advanced technology basically at our fingertips and at a level of community control, where we can start producing the things that we need on demand and based upon use value exchange, right? Or direct trade that eliminates the excessive waste, or that eliminates a whole host of things. Excessive energy, is bad for our environment, bad for the ecology, and it does not respond to the creativity of all the different things that we need on demand. So that's a critical piece. But in the meantime, in the short term, to deal with these crises, we're going to need tool lending, libraries, because we're not always going to have access to things to fix a car, things to fix a house. But if we're sharing these things collectively, right,
Mm-hmm.
pulling
Mm-hmm.
on each other collectively, we can work to meet each other's needs, at a base level. So that's a critical piece. Then, the once you get to a level of where we're doing all this, uh, you're gonna meet political resistance, and you got to be able to defend what you build. So you need to have some level, start thinking about off the top how you're going to defend yourself and defend the community and defend the gains of autonomous, self-determined production that you engaged in. So you're going to have to set up some level of self-defense committee and practice, in order to move things forward. And it's better for that in an organized fashion rather than a chaotic fashion, which will just kind of lead to
Excuse
first
me.
time a kind of a warlordism like that. Unfortunately, we're seeing in Haiti, the past couple of years, by way of example, if you want to understand what I'm talking about. And all societies can and will quickly degenerate to that point if conditions necessitate. So don't any form of American exceptionalism and thinking that can't happen here. It can happen here, and those of us, me and you grew up in L.A. Thandisizwe, so we know at different points in time in our own community, it did exist. Didn't get written about in a particular way. That was kind of every man, woman, and child for themselves in parts of the 70s and 80s. And it produced some horrendous things, but also produced some glorious things.
Mm-hmm.
But I draw from my LA experience one critical thing before I move to the next piece, because it leads into that, is that if you look at what LA or Chicago or Kansas City, St. Louis, some of these other places did, what Black working class people did. Now they may have engaged in and do engage in sometimes antisocial behavior, predatory behavior, but there's another side to that, which is organization being done without people demanding or dictating, but it being coming spontaneously from the class to meet its needs. And I cite that just to tell people, don't ever say that, oh, we can't organize this or we can't organize. That's bullshit. You see it in your community every single day. You just might not recognize it as one particular form that's doing everything you want. But the example that it does exist speaks to what we have the capacity to do, and we got to fight for it. Now that leads us to the last point of what we want to articulate. All this, if it's going to be done in a manner that's not chaotic, it really has to be planned and coordinated. And so whether you want to call them people's assemblies or planning councils or popular assemblies or whatever, you need to pull people together to make collective decisions
Mm-hmm.
around how the goods and services that we are, taking on, if you follow this path, taking on the grid, how these things are going to be distributed in an equitable manner,
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that nobody's left behind, right? And that those who choose to engage and choose to make the sacrifice to be involved, that they are taken care of. That needs to be planned. Cannot just be rely upon total spontaneity. Otherwise, things will fall to the crack, and we kind of replicate certain aspects of exploitation that we don't want to reproduce. I don't believe so. And the
Mm-hmm.
last critical piece, these are activities which are about care, but we want this to go someplace. At least I do, right? And that is for a broad transformation of this empire, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's we trying to part of this program is articulated. It comes on the heel of how do you start building people's both productive capacity, but build relationships in an era where organizations in our community have been utterly gutted and or destroyed, particularly the political ones. So this is
Mm-hmm.
kind of how do we begin to engage that to meet our needs, but we have to be clear about what we're striving for, which is
Right.
unity, number one, but we also need to be striving for self-determination, and I would argue we need to be striving for a socialist transformation of this empire, to flip the script on it, if you would, to enable it to all these different things that humanity has accumulated by way of knowledge collectively. And what do I mean by that? So, you know, on the one hand, for instance, I have a fear of AI. I have a fear of it because who controls the technology and how it's used. I
Mm-hmm.
don't have a fear about humanity to be able to create things that might make it easier for all of us to enjoy life. That's a benefit. But it's
Right.
just who owns and controls it. That is the problem. And so
Mm-hmm.
we need to subject that to democratic control to the greatest extent possible. and that requires not only folks doing and planning each other, but being mindful of what we are working towards and coming up with some collective direction on that. And that requires political education. Do not underestimate
Absolutely.
that. All those who engage in it, you got to consider this through a political lens and be fighting for that. So that's we're going to be covering this in more detail and more in depth. I'm in part, using this to share just information and things that we've kind of accumulated through, or at least for me, I'm gonna speak for myself personally in this. The last, I would say, 25 years of my life, really starting from things I learned from trying to build the School of Social Justice and Community Development in Oakland, all the way on down, through what happened in Hurricane Katrina and me being with the People's Hurricane Relief Fund and dealing with that disaster and the lessons I got to learn there, how that wound up being, taken to first for me personally, then into Atlanta, doing that organizing with the U.S. Human Rights Network, knowledge and skill and connections acquired there, and then trying to get that on down to Jackson to execute the Jackson Kush plan. So it's the things I'm sharing don't come, it ain't no abstract shit. This is things
ain't no whim.
Come up trying to assess. And I'm not claiming by any stretch of the imagination this is the answer, right? I think it's part of an answer that we need to construct collectively, but just want to share and put it out, and hopefully people can pick it up and advance on things, take it the next step further than what we've been able to do in Jackson. That's the point. That's the intent. Because we need folks. We can't existing in an island by itself. We too vulnerable to be destroyed, bombed out, burned out. And believe me, our enemies have full intent on doing it. They don't hide that by any stretch of the imagination. So, we need to be prepared. And part of that is, folks building up their capacity and base in every community where we got people so that we can federate, and create our own, supply chains, value chains, and our own political federation, to be able to flip the script and create ultimately what we need. So we're going to be laying that out. Hopefully everybody can join us for the first full one. That's just going to be an intro and kind of full of, making the argument in more detail, some of what you heard here. So you got a little taste of it. But definitely join us on the 11th.
So that's February 11th. I believe that, what time is that?
We starting at 6 o'clock my time, 6 Central time. So that'd be 4 o'clock West Coast time, 5 o'clock Mountain time, 6 p.m. Central time, 7 p.m. East Coast.
7 p.m. East Coast time. Tuesday, February 11th, 4 p.m. West Coast, 7 p.m. East Coast, 6 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Mountain. That's on the Cooperation Jackson and Rootwork YouTube channels. The Build and Fight formula, something that can be done to beat back not just this latest threat from the tariffs, but the entire system that has created this latest threat. I want to thank you, Kali, for jumping on here real quick. I want to thank all of you who have tuned in. I want to thank you all who have made donations to support this media. No, this person did not get up here and say, what did I miss? Go back and press play after I end the broadcast. But I want to say this also. In addition to supporting Black Liberation Media, this platform, through the Patreon, through the Venmo, through the Cash App, this is really your media. This is the type of information and the type of programming that we need to have on this platform. I am more than sure my comrades on the other shows are going to be tackling this issue in a variety of ways in the days coming up. But if they are not, do not hesitate to be like, yo, what's up with y'all? Why y'all not covering this? Why you not breaking it down for us, the audience? That's the thing about our media. You can also tell us what it is you need from us. It's not just us up here sitting around thinking, ooh, let me do a show on this. That's part of it. But you also need to demand what it is you need. You need to demand that we break down complex subjects for you, that we provide you with an analysis other than what MSNBC or the Wall Street Journal is going to give us. They are right, but you need something other than that. All of our people need an analysis other than that. And like, for example, Kali Akuno, we're not just bringing you thinkers, we're bringing you organizers and activists, people who work on these programs. So again, support Black liberation media, but also make a demand of Black liberation media. Make a demand of me on Rootwork and support Rootwork. Cash App and the Venmo is in the banner down below. Tune in next week. Go to the Cooperation Jackson website, go to their channel on YouTube and subscribe if you have not done that already. So let's be about this work that we need to be about. Kali, thank you again so much for dropping everything you was doing and hopping on the show with me tonight. Appreciate you, bro.
Appreciate everybody. I'm going through these comments. I wasn't keeping up. My apologies, y'all. Keeping up with
it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
But yeah, it's engagement. It's good. So yeah. And if you came in late, please go back to the beginning, press play, share the link, subscribe, like the show. All of that assists us in this work that we're attempting to do. All right, so I'm gonna let you go, and I'm gonna get on up out of here too, bro.
All right, till next Tuesday.
Till next Tuesday. Absolutely. All right, you take care.
All right, take care now.
And for all of y'all who have been watching, I know this is I kept y'all up late, didn't I, Rouse Pasta Sauce? But thank you again for hanging with me. Late night, quote unquote, a little bit late night. I usually come on Thursdays, but again, needed to jump on here to tackle with this. Couldn't wait till Thursday. Not for me, it couldn't. Wanted to jump on this as soon as I possibly could. That's the other thing about Black liberation media. We need to not only give you what you want and what you need, we need to give it to you as soon as we humanly possibly can. So now that we've done that, I'm gonna let y'all go ahead on and enjoy the rest of your evening. Don't forget to come check out Remix Morning Show in the morning and the rest of the shows. All right, we out. Peace. Y'all take care and stay safe.